and Jess Klimowski. This week they have help from Chris Siddiqui and John Blair. Rounding out the team is Erin Conway, Browning Page, Errol Gonsalves, and our recording engineer, Paul Hodge.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show. Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for free.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at minus 9 degrees with sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Hello there. I'm Matt Humphrey. The Manitoba government is paying up after a judge found it improperly kept hundreds of millions of dollars from children in care. It's being called a significant step forward in rectifying years of discrimination. The CBC's Ian Fraze has your details.
Manitoba has agreed in principle to a settlement worth $530 million. It follows a judge's ruling that deemed it unconstitutional for Manitoba to keep federal children in care monies for itself. The province once argued it deserved the funds because it was looking after the children, but the federal allowance was meant to ensure those kids got the same federal funding as parents get for their kids. The judge ultimately agreed, and now Manitoba will pay for compensation, damages, and other costs. The previous NDP government started this clawback in 2006, and it continued until the PCs ended it in 2019. But the next year, the Tories tried to ban any legal challenge against a clawback, but a judge overruled that. Grand Chief Kathy Merrick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs called the agreement today a significant victory. It's subject to court approval. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations is relieved to see governments commit $40 million to search a landfill for the bodies of 2 Indigenous murder victims. Ottawa and the province announced the funding last week to search Prairie Green for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. Grand Chief Cindy Woodhouse hopes the search can start right away.
And you just hope that we find them and that we can bring them home so that their children, especially their girls, their boys, their children, these moms that they're found, that they're brought home to their children so their children can mourn them properly and rest with them, that they know where their mom is resting. Right now, they don't know.
Woodhouse is sorry the families had to endure such a lengthy, politically fueled process to get the money. The $40 million is less than half the original estimate of $90 million to conduct a search. Manitobans are sending help to Gaza. After weeks of waiting in long lines, a truckload of emergency aid from the Manitoba-based Mennonite Central Committee has finally made it. The MCC says the aid was destined for almost 700 displaced families who are living in a tent city between Gaza City and Rafah. Bruce Gunther is the disaster response director for MCC. He says aid is moving at a snail's pace in the region because only 150 aid trucks are being allowed in per day, as opposed to more than 500 trucks a day in the past.
So we have 5 subsequent distributions that are going to be happening that will increase to over 2,000 households. We hope to do more. So that's, we have food lined up to do that, and then we need to get back in this queue so we can get the next truckload in.
Gunther says part of the challenge is not being able to buy items in the region. It all has to be sent in. Donald Trump won a bid to pause his $454 million civil fraud judgment. It's from the case in which Trump was found liable of overinflating the value of his business interests in New York State. An appeals judge ruled he only needs to come up with $175 million while his appeal is considered. Trump needs to post this bond within 10 days to avoid the seizure of his Manhattan properties. The former president is also in a New York court today asking to delay his hush money trial. The judge in that case just moments ago denied the delay, and that criminal trial will start as planned on April 15th. 4 suspects in Friday's attack on a Russian concert hall appeared today in a Moscow court. That's a court official speaking as each suspect is formally charged with committing an act of terrorism. All 4 appear to have black eyes or other injuries, with one suspect appearing to be semi-conscious in a wheelchair. Russian state media say the men are citizens of Tajikistan. More than 130 people were killed in Friday's attack that saw a group of armed men carry out an assault on the concert facility. An ISIS group is claiming responsibility. And Boeing is headed for a senior management shakeup. CEO David Calhoun has announced he'll be stepping down at the end of the year. As well, the head of Boeing's commercial aircraft division is retiring, and the company's board chair says he won't be standing for re-election. All this as Boeing is under increased scrutiny for safety concerns. In January, a door plug on a Boeing-made Alaska Airlines plane blew out in mid-flight. And just prior to the pandemic, two Boeing 737 MAX jets crashed, killing more than 130 people. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you have a couple of options. You can go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. Taking a look at your province-wide Manitoba forecast for the day. In Winnipeg today, we are seeing increasing cloudiness throughout the day. You can expect a mix of sun and cloud and windy at times, a high of -6. In Brandon, windy and mostly cloudy, a high of -7 degrees. In Dauphin, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of -9. In Flin Flon, sunny, a high of -8 degrees. In Thompson, sunny, a high of -10. You're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to Radio Noon. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten and I'll be with you this week on the radio. Coming up in this hour of the show, good things come in dozens, from roses to cupcakes to eggs to Junos. Brandon Boy and world-famous violinist James Ennis just collected his 12th, and we'll have a word with him after the 12:30 news. And Canada's senior population has doubled in the last 2 decades and is expected to triple over the next 25 years. We'll hear about the ramifications of that. And bike thefts in Brandon were up 30% last year. CBC reporter Chelsea Kemp talked to people about the importance of their bikes. And up first, a group of steers at the Ashern cattle auction sold for the highest price in North America last week. We'll hear why they're making the big moolah. Since 1957, the Ashern auction mark in the West Interlake has been helping producers get the best price they can for their cattle.
From Gimli to St. Martin, and from the Narrows to Arborg. That's probably the area that's serviced by this auction mark. They'll put through probably about $80 million worth of sales over the season. They shut down for the summer because there's really no sales, but they'll put a lot of cattle through here.
Yes, that's what the auction mart does for a living. It gets farmers the best prices they can for their cattle. And as you just heard, last Wednesday, it certainly did its job. A group of 51 tan-colored steers were the highest-selling steers in all of North America. And it just happened that information radio host Marcy Marcusa was there. She was speaking with the local reeve and former cattle producer Art Johansson about the importance of the cattle industry and the auction mart.
From Gimli to St. Martin, and from the Narrows to Arborg. That's probably the area that's serviced by this auction mart. They'll put through probably about $80 million worth of sales over the season. They shut down for the summer because there's really no sales, but they'll put a lot of cattle through here.
How many people will come through here today? Is this full day auction?
I'm not sure, but there's 2,000 head of cattle, and so probably 50 people, maybe 50 producers would come through here. Yeah.
And in terms of how often, this will be people that are just changing their herds or selling them off. Like, what makes a producer sell cattle besides getting out of the business?
These are the product. These are not the breeding stock. These are the calves that the herds, the cow factories are all still on the farm. And these calves that are selling now were last year's calves. And this year's calves are just dropping on the ground now.
These guys are going to become part of the food chain.
Pardon me?
These guys are going for slaughter to become part of the food chain, or are these guys going to go to breed?
Some of the heifers might go for breeding stock and become cows, but the steers would be part of the food chain, yeah. So this is a payday. Once a year, you have a payday.
How stressful is it then to be sitting here and not knowing what's going to happen at the auction?
I don't have any more cows, so it's no stress
for you,
on me.
But for these guys, for the producers that are here.
Yeah, the prices are very nice to take. So they're coming knowing that the prices are really good. It's a lot more stressful when it's the other way.
That's CBC's Marcy Marcusa speaking with Art Johansson, a former cattle producer and West Interlake Reeve at the Ashern Auction Mart last Wednesday. The group of 51 steers sold for $3.6325 per pound, the highest price in North America last week. That ended up being $2,971 per steer. All in all, the producer got just over $150,000 for the group. Matthew Atkinson is a cow-calf producer northwest of Nipawin. He's also president of Manitoba Beef Producers. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, Matthew, how rare is it for a Manitoba auction mart to lead cattle prices in North America like this?
Yeah, that's a pretty rare occurrence for sure. For most of the livestock sold in Manitoba, there's quite a lot of travel associated with it, and I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anybody that comes at quite an expense. So it's a rarity for sure to see the cattle topping the market when we add that travel on top of it too.
So what other factors came into that?
Yeah, I mean, we are in a pretty good upswing for cattle pricing right now, which is excellent to see. We've had a lot of really tough years out there too, and I'm sure everybody buying everything has seen a great increase in prices, and we've been quite late to the game, so it's really nice to see that reaching our commodity too.
Well, you mentioned the added cost of travel and so on. So I was just wondering, what's the profit margin on a Manitoba steer? Just kind of ballpark.
Oh, that's a really tough thing to even put a number to. I mean, there's so many variables in how everybody runs their own personal farms and ranches. But when we look at a couple of years ago, we really we're operating in the red. Quite honestly, it was pretty hard to make much profit out of that. And we see all of our equipment and fuel costs and everything else go up. And so now it's seeing people back in a profitable position, which is great.
Yeah, nice to get a good payday once in a while.
It is.
Yeah, and as we just heard, the prices are good right now in the Ashern area, but how are they elsewhere in the province?
They're really quite good throughout Manitoba, and so honestly, in the past couple of years, Manitoba's seen, on an average, the highest cattle prices in the country, which it's important that's on an average because we sit in the middle of the country, and so we see a percentage of our cattle go east and a percentage go west. And as we see one impacted by something like maybe drought or flooding or any weather events or any other significant events, we can take advantage of the higher price at either side of the country being right in the middle, and that's averaged out to a better price for our producers.
So what variables are bringing the prices so high right now?
I guess one of the really big ones is, of course, demand. We have a very low cattle herd, the lowest we've had in a great many years. In Manitoba, in Canada, in North America, our cattle numbers are very low. We've been through a lot of tough years of some droughts and things like that, and it's hard when we weren't seeing as profitable markets to just kind of remain a market share. We had a lot of folks sell their land that we see used for other purposes that saw it be more profitable. So it's nice to really catch up with that now and see that really short demand, short supply lead to a greater demand.
And what do those high prices at auction mean for consumers who buy beef at the grocery store?
Yeah, I mean it's always a touchy subject, as we've seen a lot of all groceries going up, but really there's a great disconnect between what we see at a retail level for the most part and what we get back as consumers. Unfortunately, as cattle ranchers, farmers, especially cow-calf folks like myself, we're purely price takers, and so we can only really take what the market has to offer, and so we operate at quite a big disconnect. It's something where we saw retail prices go up a couple of years ago, but we were still really a lot of folks operating at a loss, and so we have a real delay in that price swing like that.
So I wonder if the producers are getting better money now. Is that going to be passed on?
Yeah, again, that disconnect, it's unlikely to see a ton of influence in there, but we do see it kind of coming closer with all of our sectors down the road from a cow-calf producer making maybe a little bit less of a cut out of it, if that's fair to say. I mean, we have a few different industries, being cow-calf, feedlot, and then the packing industry and the distribution in there, and it's hard to have everyone remain really profitable all at the same time.
Right. Now, you mentioned drought a little bit earlier, and again, it was a dry winter here in Manitoba. So how are beef producers feeling going into spring and summer?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of concern. It was a dry winter. It was nice it was a warmer winter, so a few people can maybe carry over some feed because cows don't eat nearly as much when it's warm out. But we're very dry. We have a low water table. We have a low groundwater. We didn't get really fall, snow, or rain events, and so we have quite a lot of concern about that. And it's fair to say that's felt the same or quite a lot worse all across the West, across the prairies.
And how long do you expect cattle prices to stay this high?
Well, I mean, I can't predict the future. I wish I could, but I mean, all indicators are that we're into at least a couple more years of this kind of price upswing, but it's really tough to know what events out of our control can happen and push that down. We're highly reliant on trade. We have a lot of factors in there too, with the value of dollars and trade and things like that too.
Well, thanks very much for talking to us, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Always happy to talk. I really appreciate the interest.
Bye-bye. Matthew Atkins, raises cattle near Neepawa and is president of the Manitoba Beef Producers.
Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Phelan. We're the hosts of the irreverent history podcast, The Secret Life of Canada.
We've covered everything from the history behind the iconic Bay blanket to why blackface is still a thing and how all our histories can be traced back to our relationship with water.
Oh, you forgot about the controversial debate over which dessert is the most Canadian, the butter tart or the Nanaimo bar.
Yes, I did forget that. That was intense.
The Secret Life of Canada. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM. I'm Laurie Hugh-Stratton. Coming up in the show, James Ennis's Juno shelf is getting crowded. He has to find room for a 12th golden statue now that he won for Classical Album of the Year solo artist. James will join us after the 12:30 news. And Canada's senior population has doubled in the last 20 years and is expected to triple over the next 25. We'll hear what that means for caregivers and the housing industry and all those things related to that big bump in population. Looking at the forecast, increasing clouds late this afternoon. Mainly cloudy tonight, chance of scattered flurries this evening and overnight. We're hoping to get up to -6 today in Winnipeg. Tuesday, mainly cloudy with a few scattered flurries, and -7 will be the high. Tuesday night, cloudy with some clear breaks. And on Wednesday, cloudy with sunny breaks, which is somewhat like a clear break. I'm not quite sure what the distinction is there. But anyway, -5 is the high on Wednesday. It gets above 0 on Thursday, 1 degree. And Friday, 2 degrees. Saturday, 2. And Sunday, 3. Monday, 5. A few temperatures for you. Brandon is -10. Churchill's the cold spot at -20. -15 in Dauphin. Gimli -13. The Palm -16. Thompson -19. In Winnipeg is windy, north-northeast at 35 and -10 degrees. It is 20 minutes after 12 o'clock. Well, calling all Brandon residents, lock up your bikes. Brandon police say bike thefts were up 31% in 2023. They say 190 bikes were stolen compared with 145 nabbed in 2022. Jillian Creaser explains to CBC's Chelsea Kemp how her bike was stolen.
I lost a bike, same backyard, same house, probably about 5-6 years ago. I got a bike stolen out of our backyard too. So, and it was actually a bike that I bought from the police auction.
The irony of that.
Right? So I decided then that I was done with bikes. I live on hills. I don't need a bike.
You live in the only hilly part of Brandon.
Exactly. So as a 40-year-old lady, I do not need a bike in a hilly part of Brandon. But like I said, my son's 23. He was going to use his bike for work and leisure. So when it happened to my son, I chalked it up as, oh, wow, because it happened to me like 5 or 6 years ago. And I knew that nothing was going to come out of it anyway. So the best we could do is hope that somebody saw it on People of Brandon and move on with our lives.
Kemp also spoke with Sergeant Dana McCallum with the Brandon Police Service. She spoke with Kemp about what she'd been seeing and what people can do to protect their bikes.
And so tell me about bike thefts. We seem to have a little bit of a blip between 2022 and 2023.
Yes, it does seem like there was a bit of an increase, but with our 5-year overall average with bike thefts, we are usually range somewhere between the 180 to 190 bikes stolen per year. But in 2022, we only had 145 stolen that year, and I can't explain why that was, but it does look like a huge increase when we look at 2023 because there was 190 bikes stolen that year. So it shows a 31% increase in bike thefts, but when you look at the whole overall average, we're around that same number.
And do you find, does it change other than that one dip in 2022? Is there kind of a steady percentage growth with bikes getting stolen, or is it really just kind of stable?
I would say over the last 5 years, it's been pretty stable.
And so what would you say? Because I know in Brandon, you'll often hear bike thefts are up, bike thefts are getting worse. What would you tell people about maybe how to prevent it from getting worse?
Well, obviously we would want people to ensure that they're locking their bikes up, keeping their bikes out of view. We also have, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, the 529 Garage program, and that's where we encourage all cyclists in the city of Brandon to register their bikes with 529 Garage. Registration is free, and it only takes about 5 minutes of your time. You can go online, and it's project529.com/Brandon Police Service, and you can register your bikes. That way, if they're stolen or recovered, we can get them back to the owners, and it also makes other people aware if your bike's stolen to keep their eye out for it. So it is a good idea. We encourage people to register their bikes on there.
And what happens if your bike gets stolen? What should you do?
If your bike gets stolen, contact the Brandon Police Service at 204-729-2345.
Why does BPS think bike thefts can be kind of so prolific in the city?
I think that we may start to see an increase in more bike thefts, especially as costs rise. Usually bikes are stolen and then they're exchanged for drugs or food or different items. Unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see a decrease anytime soon.
That was Sergeant Dana McCallum with the Brandon Police Service. Kemp also spoke with Brandon resident Cara Tully, who had her bike stolen along with her friends.
Tell me about when your bikes got stolen in October.
They were stolen from outside my apartment in kind of fall, September, October. Woke up one morning to go out and do errands for the day, and they weren't there.
You had just moved to Brandon, right?
Yeah, I moved here last March, so a year ago.
What did you use your bike for?
My bike was my main form of transportation. I used it to get to all of my appointments. I used it for exercise, and it has kind of created some barriers to like certain services.
At least you live in the downtown area, at least, right?
Yeah, everything that's kind of in this area is fairly easy to get to.
Do you have a new bike yet?
No, I don't. I'm hoping to find a used one. It's unfortunate that property is being stolen from people who need it and who are unable to replace it.
What's it like trying to save up and get a new bike?
It's stressful, especially with just the cost of how expensive everything is today. I can't really get ahead of myself. I'm not working right now, so I can't really save anything.
Well, does it affect getting a job too if you don't have your bike?
Yeah, it does. It makes it harder for sure. I find the bus is not the best thing to rely on, so I kind of want to try to find something that's within walking distance, and that cuts out a lot of options.
Do you know about the Kiwanis auction sale of stolen bikes?
Sorry?
The Kiwanis Club does an auction sale of used bikes in April.
Okay. No,
and
I've not heard of that.
Is that something you would think of going to?
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to, get more information for that.
And when you get your bike, are you going to do anything different too?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep it inside and get an expensive lock.
And I know you posted the bikes on Facebook. What was kind of the response you saw?
Other people were saying that they also had their bikes stolen. There was really no leads. We were able to actually recover one of the bikes. I saw somebody riding it downtown, and I yelled at them, and they gave back.
Whose bike was it?
It was Jasmine's, but it was wrecked. It's not rideable, and it was destroyed.
What did it look like when you got it back?
There was some sort of paint or some sort of, something all over it that made it really dirty. If you touched it, you get dirty, and they took the seat off, replaced it with a different seat. They took the basket off, kind of any accessories they took off. They kind of scratched at some of the defining features of the bike, I guess, to make it more unrecognizable. And the pedals also, something was wrecked with them because the pedals are no longer on. They fell off.
And that was downtown, you saw it?
Yeah.
How did you find the nerve to go confront though?
I don't know. I have a lot of nerve, and I feel like this whole situation kind of just made me a bit jaded, I guess, and it's like a violation of your privacy, and it makes you mad. So
what was it like kind of dealing with police?
They were helpful, but they also couldn't really do much, which is unfortunate. Like, it's too bad there's not more they can do.
That was CBC reporter Chelsea Kemp talking to Cara Tully about when her bike was stolen. And for more on this story, head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'm Angeline Terueo, host of The Block. Step into a 2-hour experience that feels like you're laid back, kicking it with a friend who also happens to be a music head. Always keeping it interesting. Listening to new songs you love and classics that transport you right back to your life's biggest moments. The Block, weeknights starting at 7:30 in Newfoundland on CBC Music and anytime on CBC Listen.
Our community.
Those who shape this place come from all walks of life.
Some of us you hear every day.
And others are working hard to make Manitoba a better place.
The movers and shakers.
The change makers. The people making a difference.
And CBC Manitoba is where you'll hear their stories.
CBC Winnipeg News at 6.
Information radio, up to speed.
Radio News, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Watch, listen, experience Manitoba.
You're listening to Radio Noon. It's 29 minutes after 12 o'clock. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten. And coming up in the next half hour of the show, good things come in dozens, from roses to cupcakes to eggs, if you like eggs, to Junos. Brandon Boy and world-famous violinist James Ennis just collected his 12th. We're going to have a word with him after the 12:30 news. It's always really wonderful to talk to James because, and I have a couple of times, I mean, when you start racking up the Junos like that, you're bound to cross paths more than once or twice, because he's always such a Brandon promoter. He's very proud of being from Brandon, and he gives Brandon a lot of credit for him becoming like Mr. World Famous. So we're going to talk to him. And also we're going to hear how Canada's senior population has doubled in the last 20 years and is expected to triple in the next 25. That's putting a lot of pressure on healthcare and caregivers, housing. It's going to cost a lot. It's going to be a lot of work. We'll find out how that's going to all play out. But right now, the news is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at -8 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. We begin with a difficult story. A parole hearing is underway in a high-profile case where a man beat and sexually assaulted a girl and a woman in separate random attacks in Winnipeg a decade ago. Justin Hudson was sentenced to 23 years in prison for the assaults he committed with a cousin. A 16-year-old was robbed, beaten, and sexually assaulted before ending up in the frigid Assiniboine River. Hours later, Hudson and his cousin beat and sexually assaulted a 23-year-old woman. Both pleaded guilty to 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations wants a search of the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of 2 Indigenous murder victims to start right away. Cindy Woodhouse is relieved to see governments commit $40 million to search for Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. She hopes they find them. Woodhouse regrets the families had to endure such a lengthy, politically fueled process to get the money.
I'm sorry for everything that what this country had put that family through, and again and again. And I think that we could have, more support to our women when they're struggling.
The $40 million committed is less than half the original estimates of $90 million to conduct a search. The United Kingdom is accusing Russia of large-scale cyber attacks on the body that oversees the country's elections. The cyber attack on the Electoral Commission took place in 2021. British intelligence says the hackers gained personal details of about 40 million voters. In Parliament, Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden announced sanctions on 2 individuals and a company linked to Beijing.
Any targeting of members of this House by foreign state actors is completely unacceptable. These actions demonstrate a clear and persistent pattern of behaviour that signals hostile intent from China.
Beijing calls the accusations baseless smears. In other news,
this is election interference. That's all it is. Election interference. And it's a disgrace.
Donald Trump will face a criminal trial for the first time. The former president lost his bid to delay his hush money trial in New York. It will begin on April 15th to find whether Trump made a payoff to keep a story of an alleged affair a secret during the 2016 campaign. But Trump did win a delay in his $454 million civil fraud judgment. He's been found liable of overinflating the value of his businesses in New York. An appeals judge ruled he needs to come up with only $175 million to post bond while his appeal is considered. He's been given 10 more days to raise the money. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
All right, that's Matt Humphrey with the CBC News. Now I'm joined by Riley Lachuk, weather specialist, also with CBC. Hi, Riley.
Good afternoon. Another below seasonal day today, Lori.
Yeah, burr.
But there's a little bit of hope on the horizon if you're looking for something a little more spring-like.
I am indeed.
To start April. Looking at temperatures across the province right now, sitting at -9 in both Winnipeg and Brandon. To put that into perspective, I was talking about this last week. These are normal nighttime lows for this time of the year. So, a bit below seasonal through the day today. -4s for Morden and Sprague at the moment. Thompson -15, Churchill -18 degrees. We do have some weather watches and warnings to tell you about as well. Not here in Manitoba, but points to the east. So areas like Rainy River through Fort Frances under a weather advisory, and a snowfall warning for areas like Dryden toward Atikokan, winter storm watches into the Thunder Bay region. This because of that Colorado low that dodged us here in Manitoba, bringing some cloud cover as expected to southern Manitoba today and parts of eastern Manitoba. Some flurries moving through areas like Emerson, through Sprague, Piney, into the Kenora region through the afternoon today. That does pick up a little bit as we get into the afternoon, but really just grazing Manitoba precipitation-wise, but we will really start to feel that wind-wise as we get through the afternoon today into tomorrow. So cloud builds in as we move through the afternoon into the evening hours. Generally for Winnipeg, the Red River Valley into Eastman, overnight tonight into Tuesday, chance of some scattered flurries throughout the night into the morning hours tomorrow. Could even see some of that spilling over into the afternoon hours. Otherwise, we're looking at a breezy day ahead for Tuesday. Things kind of start to clear a little bit on Wednesday. So by the time we get into the afternoon, we should be a little bit sunnier. Snowfall accumulations, really scattered flurries, I'm calling it for southern Manitoba. Trace to maybe 2 centimeters if you get stuck in one of these heavier bands of flurries. More snow, though, out to the east and to the north. So areas like Pinawa, Sprague looking at potentially up to 2 to 5 centimeters. Dryden, Fort Frances into that 10 to 15 centimeter range by the time we get to the end of the day tomorrow. Winds north 20, gusting 40 as we head through into the afternoon, into the evening hours, staying breezy as we head into Tuesday morning and into the afternoon. It really isn't until Wednesday that we just start to see a little bit of clearing and a little bit of calming take place. So mainly cloudy, -6 in Winnipeg, mainly sunny, -6 in Gimli this afternoon, Brandon -7. For tomorrow, we're looking at a high of -7 in Winnipeg, winds gust to 40 out of the north, northwest 20 to 40 on Wednesday with a high of -5. And then we're looking at 1s and 2s, Lori, as we wrap up the week.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. And hasn't it been like wickedly windy? It seems to be like blowing a gale all the time.
Yeah, we're looking at windy conditions. This is the effect of that Colorado low, unfortunately. Not getting the precipitation, the snow per se, but we really are going to feel the northwesterly winds on the backside of that low as it moves across northwestern Ontario.
Well, there's a guy that walks past our house every day, and he has this amazing parka with this huge fur that sticks way out. And I think, I want his coat because it cuts the wind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm beginning to fear for the Easter Bunny.
Well, a couple more days of windy conditions, and we're looking at seasonal by the time we hit Easter.
Okay. Well, we'll cling to that. Thanks a lot, Riley.
No problem.
You can hear Riley this afternoon on Up to Speed. You're listening to Radio Noon. At the moment, it is 23 minutes before 1 o'clock. Well, to say world-renowned violinist James Ennis is the pride of Brandon would be an understatement. So would saying he's won a few Junos. James Ennis now has an even dozen Juno Awards, having added another this weekend for Classical Album of the Year Solo Artist. The recording is called Nielsen Violin Concerto Symphony No. 4. And we've reached James Ennis in Seattle. Good afternoon and congratulations, James.
Thank you.
So, how did it feel to learn you'd won your 12th Juno Award?
Well, it's always really special. You make these recordings and you just hope that people care. You hope that people listen. This one was really special. I was with the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra in Bergen, Norway, and they're an orchestra that I'm really close with, and their conductor is one of my really great friends in the business, Edward Gardner. And this piece is a fantastic piece of music. I mean, Carl Nielsen is kind of the pride of Danish classical composers, early 20th century composer. His music is still a little bit kind of off the radar in Canada, I would say. Some of his symphonies are played, but this violin concerto doesn't come around that often. So this was a real passion project for us, I guess I'd say. And yeah, it's just nice to know that people are listening. We were really proud of what we did with it. We got really deep into the weeds with this project, worked really hard on it. And so it feels nice, very nice.
I was wondering, why is it called the music? Why is it called the Inextinguishable? What does that refer to?
Well, that's the other part of the program. So I recorded the violin concerto and the Fourth Symphony, which is the rest of the CD. That's known as the Inextinguishable.
I see.
Because it's just it basically. Well, if you heard the music, I think that'd probably be the best way to explain it. It's this very, very high energy piece that it's just something, that gives the feeling that it just cannot be conquered.
Yeah.
His music is really, really very, very passionate stuff and full of life and energy. So I highly recommend it.
Okay. Well, we'll try and play a little out after we talk to you. Now, you mentioned that you were with people that you loved working with and that you knew well. Because I wanted to ask you, what are the elements that make an album like this so special when you're actually making it?
Well, I think that, sometimes, I mean, no one's going to go to the trouble of making an album if they don't think it's going to turn out well. But sometimes just circumstances sort of throw people together, and you don't necessarily come from a place of great shared experience or even necessarily shared musical ideas or values. So being able to do a project with Ed Gardner, this conductor that's such a close friend, and his orchestra. I mean, this is, I think, the third or fourth recording we've made together. So we've been down this road. We can speak very frankly to one another. We really can work closely. Is this really what we're trying to say with this music? Is this really the best version that we can do? So it ends up being a lot of fun because you really... You feel like, I don't know, there's that good feeling of doing work as well as you think you can. I think anyone can appreciate that.
And what about the sort of in-person element of it? As opposed to, so many sort of cobbled together pieces now, but you're right there with the other musicians.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the great joys of live music making is you feed off one another's energy, and one player does something interesting and we all react to that, and it becomes this sort of shared collective experience. So yeah, that's really what I love most about my job. Lucky me, it's a nice job.
It is nice, but you were saying you're very fond of Bergen in Norway. Do you think that's because you're used to the kind of northern clime of Manitoba?
There's so many Norwegians around Manitoba and the Dakotas. And, I don't know. I've always felt very at home there. And actually a former, he's now retired, but the leader of the violins of the orchestra for many years, a man named David Stewart, is also from Manitoba. So, we would be there together in Bergen, Norway, a couple of Manitoba boys, and that felt kind of funny.
Well, I want to ask you, I know I've asked you this in the past, but I'd like to hear you talk about it. How do you think being raised in Brandon put you on your musical path?
Well, the School of Music at Brandon University is just such a fantastic place, and the musical community there is, and has been for generations, unique, very special. I mean, Manitoba in general, I think, has such a strong art scene, and there's so much support for young people that pursue the arts. So I've said it many times that there certainly couldn't have been a better place for me to grow up in terms of receiving so much support, encouragement, and guidance from world-class people.
Wonderful. Well, you never get tired of saying it, but we never get tired of hearing it. That's for sure. It's wonderful the way you support your province. And when will we see you back in Manitoba?
Well, I'll be back with the Winnipeg Symphony in September. I think it's the opening concerts of their season, I believe. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hope to have a few free days also to go, maybe head out to Brandon, see some friends.
Very nice. Well, thank you for being with us on Radio Noon, and congratulations.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. That's James Ennis. He received his 12th Juno this weekend for Classical Album of the Year Solo Artist. Recording is called Nielsen Violin Concerto Symphony No. 4. Oh, that's part of the first movement from Nielsen Violin Concerto Symphony No. 4. Guess who's playing the violin? Yes, it was James Ennis. And you're listening to Radio Noon. It is 14 minutes before 1 o'clock. Canada's over 85 population is one of the fastest growing groups in the country. And according to Statistics Canada, the healthcare sector is not ready for the influx of people needing long-term care. That's why more and more family members are becoming full-time caregivers. But what toll is that increasing responsibility taking on their mental and physical health? CBC's Danielle Piper has more.
Canada's senior population is growing at an alarming rate. According to Statistics Canada, the healthcare sector is not ready for the influx of seniors needing long-term care. That's why more and more family members are becoming full-time caregivers. But as their responsibilities grow, what toll is it taking on their mental and physical health?
Our lives have been very much disrupted. My partner lives in Vancouver. He caretakes his mother, so I don't see him very often. My youngest daughter just had my 5th grandchild, so I don't get to see that new baby very often. There are times when I can be very anxious. I need more time to stay on top of my physical health, actually. I'm not a young person anymore, and I can't just go out for a walk.
That's Christine Claire Ryan in Qualicum Beach, Vancouver Island, a former electrician and full-time caregiver to her mum since January 2023. She's part of the 25% of Canadians whose personal lives are being disrupted by caregiving. And it's people like Christine and her mother that senior care advocates are fighting for. One of those advocates is Laura Tamblin-Watts. Laura's the author of Let's Talk About Aging Parents and the CEO of CanAge, a nonprofit organization working to advance the rights and well-being of aging Canadians. She says that the government designed the Healthcare Act when the average age of death was in the mid to late 70s. Problem is, people are living longer lives with far less savings.
When you're in your mid-80s, mid-90s, or even after 100, the financial security is critically important. What that also means is if you don't have that financial security, you may not be able to afford your own care. In fact, if you need the 24/7 home care, it's going to range between $100,000 and $300,000 a year. And it is a rare person who's got that kind of money.
The result? Family members, usually women, are forced to make a difficult decision. Quit and become a full-time caregiver, or do both and suffer the overwhelm of caregiving for one, two, or sometimes multiple individuals.
What we are seeing is that what we used to call the caregiver burden is becoming more and more concentrated. And that's because the number of people in their middle years is very small compared to the number of people in their later years. We used to have a bow, narrow at the top, narrow at the bottom, and lots of people in the middle. It's an hourglass now. So I'm in Gen X, and we're the smallest generation. And right now there's a caregiver burden of one person providing care for 4 older adults. Very soon it will be 1 in 6. And shortly after that, it will be one person providing care for 8 people.
Luckily, there are people out there working on solutions.
I'm Janet Fast. I'm a professor in the Department of Human Ecology at the University of Alberta, and I'm a family economist by training.
Janet studies the economics of aging and caregiving. She says that unpaid support for family caregiving is a legitimate policy issue that many policymakers and advocacy organizations are working hard to resolve. And in many ways, provinces are trying their best to provide necessary support.
In terms of developing services to support caregivers, discussion groups, even electronic communications among caregivers themselves is very helpful. Caregivers Alberta has a good program that they offer to family caregivers to help them to understand the job that they're signing up for and where supports might be found for the tasks that they're doing. And just educating caregivers about those things has been shown to be very helpful.
There's also technologies that caregivers can use. Want to monitor, manage, and schedule the person you're caring for? Janet says there's an app for that, and lots more in the making. In the meantime, what Christine wants to see is more consistency with care workers who come to visit, because it really makes a difference with her mom.
There are some really, really good caregivers, and they make connections with mom, and they will sit and chat with her and give her some one-on-one emotional support. And when she does make a connection with one of the care workers, I notice a big difference in how she is for the rest of the day. It makes a big, big difference to her well-being.
Other helpful tips? Janet says it's important that caregivers do their best to take care of themselves first, while Laura stresses the importance of having those difficult conversations with her parents a lot earlier in their lives. Talk about wills, finances, health, and everything in between. It's tough to think about, but it makes things a lot easier. For CBC Radio, I'm Danielle Piper.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and The National on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
You're listening to Radio Noon. It is 8 minutes before 1 o'clock. Well, the James Barker Band took home the Juno for Country Album of the Year this past weekend. Here's the title track off that award-winning album. This is Ahead of Our Time.
Girl, on paper, you and me were a perfect lit match, like a spark in the dark that we couldn't make last, but it wasn't 'cause we didn't try. Like throwing water on a wildfire. We were off, we were on, you were here when I was gone. Yeah, we had a lot of rights, but we still got it wrong. Guess there wasn't nothing we could do. But when I think about me and you, we were just too young, too fast, too wild and free to pay attention to the what if it was meant to be. Taste of heaven was a hell of a ride. I'd be lying if I didn't say I get to wondering if you wonder what could have been if we'd have finished what we started on way back when. If we'd have met now, would it have been right? Maybe we were just ahead of our time. It's been years since we talked, since you told me never change. And I guess my heart listened, 'cause it still feels the same way it did that night we walked away. Wish I could hit the ground running back to yesterday, when we were too young, too fast, too wild and free to pay attention to the what if it was meant to be. Taste of heaven was a hell of a ride. I'd be lying if I didn't say I get to wondering if you wonder what could have been if we'd have finished what we started on way back when. If we'd have met now, would it have been right? Maybe we were just ahead of our time. Ahead of our time. The kind of love you never seen before. I guess the world wasn't ready for. Girl, we were too young, too fast, too wild and free to pay attention to the what if it was meant to be. Taste of heaven was a hell of a ride. I'd be lying if I didn't say I get to wondering if you wonder what could have been if we'd have finished what we started on way back when. If we'd have met now, would it have been right? Maybe we were just ahead of our time. Ahead of our time. Ahead of our time. Yeah. Baby, we were just ahead of our time.
That was James Barker Band with Ahead of Our Time. They took home the Juno for Country Album of the Year this past weekend. And now I welcome guest host Chloe Friesen into the studio. But Chloe's not only a host, she's also a skilled technical producer, which is good because she just put on the headsets that don't work that well.
They don't. I can't hear myself at all right now.
And just while we're on the topic, I accidentally unplugged your computer for when you're here later.
I will plug that back in.
Okay, I can't make the thing go in the back there. So I'm just giving you the heads up. Well, Chloe, tell me, what's on the show this afternoon?
So I know we were just listening to a song from an artist who won a Juno Award.
Indeed.
We're going to keep the Juno talk going, but we're going to hear a little bit of a critique from someone here in Winnipeg.
Oh.
So we're going to hear from a Winnipeg musician who actually no longer watches the awards show. Is calling for the removal of a certain award category that he says may have been created with good intentions, but he feels is overall racist. So we'll be getting into that discussion later on Up to Speed.
Well, that sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. That's if you can hear it, if you put on the right headsets.
I sure hope people can. Yeah, good show coming up. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things, and I can't wait.
Good. And don't forget to plug in the laptop.
I will plug in the laptop.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Chloe. That's guest host Chloe Friesen, who will be hosting Up to Speed with 1.5 headsets on, and she will remember to plug in the laptop so she can tell you the weather. You've been listening to Radio Noon as I've been trashing the studio left and right. Poor Chloe. And really enjoyed being with you this afternoon. I'd like to say thanks to Corey Funk, Kaladin Mulugeta, Chelsea Kemp, Matt Humphrey, Riley Lachuk, Brad Lillies on the video, Daniel Friesen behind the board, and director Dylan Longhurst. Been fun being with you. I'll be with you all week. Nilligan Gonzalez is our show producer, and you are listening to CBC Radio 1. Coming up next, The Next Chapter. Join us tomorrow for more Radio Noon and join Chloe from 3 to 6 for Up to Speed.